So, welcome back to day number 2 of Plant Your Future campaign by POUP. And this is under the action of POUP Initiative 1.0. And it's a very great evening in the India. And I'm sitting right here with this wonderful people and with me in on this meeting on this occasion. And as we know that we are going to talk a very serious topic today, the day 2 conference will be on the climate change causes mental health problems like depression and anxiety. And I have some masterminds with me today to speak on this topic and to just share their experiences, their logics, and all of their scientific factuations that will make this conference and this session actually validated. So now, before starting it up, I would just like to thank some of the people without whom this conference won't happen possible. Our media partner, themutebreak.com, our beverage partner, Drink Z. We will have our blog partner as Steenherds, and we will have our advertisement partner as Lomba Updates from Indonesia. And we will also have our special partner, the Startup Times magazine, and we will have our, most importantly, the host, the Wopno Talks. So I will be starting this whole conference up. Just before that, we will just have some kind of a small knack shock, and that is something like that. In today's world, we know that climate change is one of the burning issue, as everybody states it as, but I would like to state it in a different way. That in today's world, climate change is not a burning issue. In today's world, it has already been to a level where it's burning the earth. It's not a burning issue itself. So let's concentrate on this conference, not just as a practical and a daily conference. Let's focus on this conference as a practical scenario in front of you, that what is the actual form of climate change and what kind of dangerous situation it is going to bring up in the next few years. Coming to our next speaker, Dr. Jaishree Subrahmaniam. She's a PhD graduate from India. She has created Prakash, a mental health organization where she helps other people. She has also achieved she is actually a mentor. She's an active mentor in the South Asian Girls under the Lotus STEM team, and also running a boot camp to mentor Indian students in writing and publishing scientific articles and providing them mental health support. With that, she's also the vice president and editor of Sci Community, I think so, Sci Community Group. So welcome, Dr. Jaishree Subrahmaniam, and we will just like to hear what you have to say on this topic.
So thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all you people who have taken the time out to come and discuss this really important topic. And I am actually really honored to be a part of this amazing initiative and to have a chance to talk about a topic that I'm deeply passionate about. The topic of my conversation with you guys today would be about eco-anxiety among youth, which is an unseen effect of climate change. Before we get into that, let me just give you a little gist about who I am. As was already mentioned, I am Dr. Jaishree Subrahmaniam. I'm currently working for the government of India, where I'm trying to devise policies for helping women in STEM. I am a botanist by training. I have a bachelor's and a master's from Miranda House, the University of Delhi. I moved to America after my post-graduation to the University of Columbia University to do a project on forest ecology, and following which in fact, as of March 2020, I finished a PhD from the French National Institute of Agricultural Research. As was already mentioned, I'll just reiterate very quickly the fact that I have very accessory passions, including science communication. I am the vice president of one of the largest science communication platforms on Instagram, which is the SciComm group. I am a volunteer and a mentor for the Lotus STEM team, which is an international Canadian NGO which works for South Asian women in STEM. Mental health has been a very deep passion of mine, and I am working with this NGO called Dragonfly Mental Health, who provide mental health services to academics. I created a mental health support group called POUP for graduates and postdocs from across the globe. And combining all of these passions of mine, I'm now trying to create a brand which is called Captain Plants, with the overarching theme of what you can learn from life lessons from plants. A little bit about that will come towards the end of my talk. But to start off by why I care about mental health of young adults, this is something that I shared not quite long ago, which was From solving the climate crisis to providing food, science as we know it does have key to all the problems that our planet is currently facing. But the mental health of our researchers, of the academics, is a continually growing concern. And I really, truly do believe that it's only by addressing issues related to mental health can we support the wellness of our current and future scientific leaders. To put this in perspective of the talk of today, mental health among the youth is also a very important and a crucial topic that we need to be discussing about quite more often. And I really do believe that it's only by addressing these issues can we support the wellness of our current and future world leaders, and in turn the world itself. Climate change is, as was mentioned by Goddess Kyra as well, is not a distant threat anymore. We are living in the reality of it. It's happening right here, right now. The impacts of climate disruption around the world are clear, costly, and widespread. And every second of delay means we are dealing with the cost and impacts of it. Some of the impacts, as you can see on the left side of this slide, could be like wildfires. There are flooded coastlines. There are heat waves. There are very continually growing threats that our environment is facing. But to bring your attention to the right side and the bottom part of the slide I had, the picture I have on the right side, is the fact that some 84% of people surveyed, young people surveyed, they think that they still need more information to understand how to prevent climate change. And some 89% of youth respondents still think that they believe that they can make a difference on climate change. And they're right, because we are the first generation that can end poverty, and we are the last generation to slow the effects of global change before it is too late. People are worried, and for good reason, right? All this time, we've been talking about the environmental impacts of climate change. But as we all know, and we are quite well aware of the fact that it's not just the environment that's affected by it directly. There are a lot of accessory climate change effects that we are facing right now, and we are going to continue to face them if no changes are being made. Some of the direct impacts of accessory effects of climate change could include effects due to the severity of extreme weather events such as heat waves, droughts, and floods that can make mass migrations happen, relocation of entire towns, shrinking of productivity of harvest, the food that we eat, loss of capacity of people to even work. And there could be indirect impacts as well, which means like loss of livelihoods of people and property. And this can alter the entire vector, the way that diseases are being spread. The current pandemic that the world is going through is also an effect of climate change. But there is still something people don't talk about much often. The Lancet report on 2018 on sustainable development and global mental health called mental illness one of the most neglected of all human health conditions. Why? If you may ask so, I actually really did like this representation from the American Psychiatric Association, where they very beautifully showed the impact of climate change on an individual's physical health, the mental health, and how all of that combined can lead to a trickle-down effect on the health of the community in itself. This is just to reiterate the point that I was making. I'm sorry. The effects of global climate change on mental health are a very, very integral and crucial part of the climate debate that we are having, and they need to be addressed much more often. Mental health consequences of climate change can actually range from very minimal stress symptoms to actually really severe clinical disorders, including anxiety, depression, sleep deprivation, suicidal thoughts, to even post-traumatic stress disorders. But we're not talking about it enough. Mental health and psychosocial well-being were defined as very critical and integral part by the WHO. In 2015, when the world leaders came together and they signed the Sustainable Development Goals, they talked about a very important part of prevention and treatment of non-communicable diseases, including behavioral development and neurological disorder. And they agreed that they constitute a major challenge to the sustainable development of this world. Of the 169 targets that exist in the 2015 Sustainable Development Goals, the goal 3, which specifically has two targets, 3.4 and 3.5, they talk about mental health. Target 3.4, as you can see on my slide, talk about by 2030, they aim to reduce by 1/3 premature mortality from non-communicable diseases through prevention and treatment to promote mental health and well-being. Whereas Target 3.5 talks about the substance abuse and how to reduce that. The Director General of WHO actually commended this effort, and she said that the inclusion of non-communicable diseases under a health goal was a historical turning point, and these problems were finally getting the attention that they deserve, and it is the only way to move the world towards a greater fairness that leaves no one behind. Pretty ambitious, right? But how far have we come? So this is a slide that I found, the most recent one from Our World in Data. I'm sorry, there was no data available beyond 2017, but this was a slide that I wanted to share because it shows the share of population as of 2017 that is still living with mental health and substance use disorders. If you can broadly see across the globe, it's still tilted towards the darker side of the red, right? So there's a problem and we need to be talking about it. But let me shift the attention a little bit towards the climate anxiety among young adults. So, in 2017, a report that was published by the American Psychological Association provided a very interesting term, which was eco-anxiety. What is eco-anxiety? It's eco-anxiety or climate depression is actually characterized by severe and debilitating worry about the climate and environmental risk. And it can actually elicit dramatic reactions such as loss of appetite, sleeplessness, panic attacks among those who are affected. If you think about anxiety, I'm an evolutionary biologist by training, and when I think about anxiety as a evolutionary alarm mechanism, it is similar to how you have the response of taking your hand away from, say, a hot surface. So it's an adaptive advantage for survival, right? But this can, when you think about this, yes, it can also create a global victim kind of a mindset. So how is eco-anxiety impacting the youth of today? There are people who are living in existential dread. To give you a context about island nations like Fiji, there are children who are living with this existential dread that the place that they called as home may not exist in some time. And they feel that their world can literally vanish within a decade. That can also lead to a loss of anxiety, loss of identity. To give you context, in 2019, weather-related hazards triggered some 24.9 million displacements in over 140 countries. Research shows that without ambitious climate action or disaster risk reduction, this could lead to over 200 million people each year needing humanitarian assistance by the year 2050. That's a huge number. There is an uncertainty crisis. So there are countries which are facing doomsday as of today, but there are countries like the UK and the US that are still sometime a little far away from that doomsday, but children, their youth there are still living with the uncertainty over their future because they don't know what's going to happen in the future, and they are right to feel like that, right? So there are youth that are giving up on key aspects of life because there are people who are deciding to not even go to the extent of not even having kids, which is an essential evolutionary mechanism for survival of any species. When it comes to dealing with anxiety of an individual, we have mechanisms to deal with it. There are interventions that can happen. There are methods that can be adopted. But this is a global problem, and this doesn't end there. There are so many other things that youth is facing currently, and they feel like because this is a global problem, they don't know how to deal with it. But there are still some ways that you can deal with it. The first one is, I'm sorry, before saying that, when Greta addressed the World Economic Forum and she asked the world to say that I want you to panic, the world actually did panic. I panicked quite a bit. But I think the point of her statement was to make the people of power feel the guilt of what has happened to this planet, right? And I agree that people like myself and a lot other people are still facing that eco-anxiety, and they feel like there is no way that we can come out of it, but there are some ways that you can deal with your eco anxiety. The first one, as you can see, is reconnecting with nature. It's important that we remember that if we are worrying about the environment, it means actually we care about it. So turning away from the 24/7 news cycle, we can actually think about spending some time outdoors, connecting with the world that we love so much. And trust me, that actually does help quite a bit. Curating your sphere of influence. When we follow somebody on social media, they actually have a huge impact on our mood. So when we are looking at those scary statistics at all the time with no actions or solutions, we should consider creating a new sphere of influence. And there are millions of people, there are many people who are out there who have a very optimistic outlook, and they have mechanisms to actually inspire us to rather make us feel how to deal with it rather than to feel defeated about what the state of the scenario is as of today. To banish this all or nothing thinking, being 100% sustainable is not possible always. We're all humans, right? Sometimes eco-influencers can actually make us feel like rubbish for not having the perfect zero waste home, vegan diet, or sustainable wardrobe. But I'm sorry, it just keeps going. Yeah. But it's actually good to remember that it's better that a lot of people, millions of people come together and be eco-friendly imperfectly rather than one person doing it perfectly. To fight back and take back the power, to reclaim the power of climate action, and to use the concern that we have for environment is for the good. This is something that we can do. There are two ways that we can do that. Rather than feeling powerless, we can join in on protests like the global climate strike, or we can use our voting power to elect representatives who are actually committed to tackling these issues. And to join a community and to protest with our purchases, and to expand our news coverages to looking at like a huge part of our living is actually to protest with our purchases. Actually, yes, I'm just gonna go ahead and go to the next slide now. The youth of today is a global citizen. Our generation grew up living in a society that was exposed to other cultures at a very young age. We had the power of the internet. We still do, right? We understand the importance of working together. The revolutions like the climate strike and Fridays for the Future are exactly examples of what can happen when people come together. And climate change is a global issue and can only be solved if people come together and work for this cause. And the youth is fighting back. Greta and Isra, people like that have shown that youth is anxious about their collective futures. And in March 2019 alone, over 1.6 million protesters from 125 countries demanded action to be taken to combat climate change. And what do we want? We wanted radical legislative action to combat climate change. We want the Green New Deal. We want 100% transition to renewable energy. We wanted to end this fossil fuel infrastructure and to declare climate crisis as a national emergency, because the time to do it is now. It's right now. When I mean about global collective action is something that I really believe in because my science proved it. To go back to what I mean is my PhD was actually to understand the importance of being an altruist. What I mean by that is I spent 3 years of my PhD research to understand if the possibility to help another and to be helpful for the greater good could exist, an ability of that complexity could exist in plants. And you know what? It does. In evolutionary biology, the term altruism means a behavior that benefits all organisms at the cost of itself, where cost and benefit are calculated in the terms of offsprings reared. My research gave the first ever evidence that a plant can understand when a family member is undergoing stress, empathize, and extend support as and when required. What's better is that this ability to do this is encoded in their genetic code. That's a beautiful concept, right? And when I tried to think about what altruism could mean in terms of how we deal with human emotions, I felt like when a stress that's big enough, that causes big enough stress for the entire species, that mathematically proven is a concept that says that in cases like that, the organisms can choose to come together and work for a cause that is much bigger than an individual cause. And with the youth activists that I can see here today and all the people who are fighting for climate justice, I see that being translated in humans right here, right now, for this particular crisis that we are dealing as a species. Empathy is part of nature's design. You know, Charles Darwin, the famous evolutionary biologist, people say that he made a very strong case for survival of the fittest. But let me tell you, he made a pretty strong case for survival of the kindest. In his book, The Descent of Man, he actually said that the communities which included great number of sympathetic members, altruists in other terms, they would flourish and bear and rear the greatest number of offspring. In other words, they would be the species that survive and they would be able to combat any problem, any threat that comes to them. All organisms, starting from fungi, bacteria, ants, mammals, and according to my research, even plants are capable of providing this particular help. And I honestly do believe that being an empath towards each other, towards the environment that we are living in, is the only way that we can survive as a species. And with this, I'd like to thank you all for your attention. And I want to just say this quote about the pale blue dot. I'm sure a lot of us know about it, from Carl Sagan, about it. Looking at the pale blue dot, he actually said that it underscores the responsibility of being more kind to one another and preserve and cherish the one pale blue dot, the only home that we have known. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jaishree, for this wonderful session, wonderful journey you took us to. And I'm really flabbergasted to know such factual knowledges that you've shared with us today. And thank you once again for being here and celebrating this occasion with us and getting that awareness reach every single house, whoever is watching this. Thank you, Dr. Jaishree, for this wonderful session.